We have about 17 in the weight room right now. So whenever you want me to open it up, just let me know, Deborah.
Okay, I'd say we can start anytime.
Okay. All right. I'm going to turn my video off and open my share and start letting people in.
And you can let me know when everyone is in. So, Alexi, let me know when everyone is in.
Yep. I'm letting them in as they come in, but I think everyone in the waiting room as of now is ready to go. So,
Okay, great. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to HBSWA Fireside Chat. Today, we're going to be talking about owning your longevity and increasing your health span, which, judging from all the people who are on this call, is very important to all of us. I'm Deborah McConkey, and I'm both a board member and chair of programming. So was very excited that Apar brought this speaker and this topic to us. Before I introduce her, and before she introduces Kristy Berry, the CEO of Cenegenics, I wanted to just do a brief little announcement of, if you could do the next slide, of our upcoming events. We've got several things going on in January and, of course, in February, from college admissions and everything you wanted to know, as well as an update from HBS by Colleen Hammerman on race, gender, and equity initiatives. So highly recommend that you attend that. And we've also got other things about dreaming and acting bold, and one on happiness and the science of happiness, serving on a corporate board, and gender gap. And I'll do a shameless promotion if you're in the San Francisco area that we have an event coming up February 19th, a first ever networking event of our group in San Francisco. So without further ado, let me introduce, as soon as I get my screen. Okay. I wanted to introduce Apar. Apar's had quite a background. She's MBA 2008 and a business development executive, which means she's worked for Samsung, Match Group, Rulala. I'm sure Match Group would have a lot of interesting stories associated with it. But her business development roles has been in various consumer industries. And she also has a track record of closing impactful large-scale deals to drive growth and revenue for companies. She's also a former founder and CEO of a fashion tech startup. So right now, she's currently advising a few early and mid-stage companies in the health and wellness and lifestyle industries, and based out of Los Angeles. So welcome, Apar, and you can take it away.
Awesome. Thank you for the kind intro, Deborah. And good afternoon, everyone. So I assume everyone's here to learn how to cheat death. Just kidding. Anyways, let me just start with some quick context. So One of the reasons I was excited to organize this event is because, like many of you, I am proactive about my health. I've always worked out, I eat well, so I'm thinking I'm good. And then in 2023, I was introduced to Cenegenics through a friend that is HBSWA, who's an investor in the company. And for those that aren't familiar, Cenegenics is a longevity and performance health company that has over 30 centers worldwide. And what they do is basically they offer these in-depth health assessments where you spend a full day in one of their clinics going through a series of tests, and you get this baseline of your cognitive and physical health. And you do everything from a DEXA scan to measure your bone health, to brain and heart scans, to 3D movement analysis for posture, and even a full body MRI. And then a physician spends a few hours with you reviewing your results and puts together a personalized health program based on that. So long story short, I decided to go through this 7-hour evaluation last year, and I learned the state of everything in my body, my bones, my brain, my heart, and I learned where it's all going to be in 10 years. I began to understand why I forget stuff, why I can't sleep, and why I crave sugar. And I realized I wasn't as healthy as I thought. So lucky for me, since then, I've also learned how to turn some of this around. And since then, full disclosure, I have gone ahead and become an advisor to Cenegenics. So our goal today is to help you be more proactive about your health as you age. And I'm sure you'll have lots of questions. So we have reserved 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. So without further ado, let me introduce Kristy Berry, the dynamic leader and CEO of Cenegenics. Kristy's been with the company for 26 years. She started out as a patient coordinator and rose the ranks to CEO in 2020. So Kristy, before we dive into all things longevity, can you just share with us what initially got you interested in longevity medicine? And more importantly, what has motivated you to stay for almost 3 decades?
Absolutely. But first, I do want to thank you, Apar, for inviting me, and for HBSWA as well for having me, and all of our audience members today. So it's just an absolute honor. So where did it all begin? It's almost been 3 decades, but when I think about, what my passion has always been in life, even from a very young age, I just love taking care of people. I loved helping people. And so I knew early on that I wanted to do something that was in the healthcare space. And, so I was kind of like aspiring to be a nurse, and that was kind of like my path. And that was my focus. So as I started to take, jobs in my younger years, I would, try and make sure that I was focused in the healthcare space just to kind of coincide with what that goal and passion was. I then started college and applied to the nursing program. It was a big year, so there was a lot going on. I was juggling not only that, but I was newly married. I had a new baby, and so while I needed to work, I was also looking for something that could help me create that balance. And I was introduced to Cenegenics. And it was a brand new company that had, come into market. And the way it was described to me was, oh, it's a new kind of healthcare. And I was like, okay, I'm not quite sure what that means, but okay, let's go with it. And so, I joined the company, as Apar mentioned, as their very first patient services associate, really entry level. And I had a really unique opportunity early on to be able to work hand in hand with executive leadership at the time in managing through a challenge that one of our VIP patients was facing. And so I got to see things from like that business lens that I had not necessarily been exposed to before in my prior roles. And I just found it so interesting. And it was like, I love a good challenge. And so I was like, you know what, I really can see myself like learning more and really wanting to understand more about business. And I felt like I like hit the lottery, because I was like, I've got now this business interest and this healthcare passion, and they're right here. And I'm able to like every day come in and do this. And so, running joke is, I've been promoted over 1,000 times. I've kind of come up through the ranks and, served in, various positions across the organization. Not a physician, but in 2020, I was elevated into the CEO role. So my journey has been really, really amazing. And I'm just so fortunate that I've had this opportunity. And especially because of the space we're in and longevity as a whole. So when we started this and really pioneered the space back in 1999, it was very what I'd call taboo. People were not talking about it. It was something that I often compared to like plastic surgery in the 70s. People would go away, come back looking a little different, a little better, but they really didn't talk about what was going on. And that's really where the space was in the late 90s, early 2000s. But our focus and our vision was to really continue to drive education and awareness around how people can think differently about how they age. And so the really evolution of the company over the last 28 years has been exactly that, really forging the way to ensure that people understand that, everyone has an opportunity to take that personalized look at themselves, and they can partner with experts in the space to create these personalized plans that help them age really gracefully, help them stay optimized, and really keep them from, experiencing all the traditional things that might be associated with aging. And so that really, in a nutshell, is why I've been here. I just couldn't peel myself away. We create such impact and transformation for people. It's so rewarding. And I just want to continue to lead and inspire and, be able to drive more and more awareness about this. And that's really what we're doing here today.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I think the space has changed tremendously, like you said, over the last 25 years. So I guess a simple question to kind of kick off our discussion. What does longevity medicine mean to you? And why is our current state of healthcare so different from longevity medicine?
Longevity to me is really about enriching my life as I age. So it's not just about extending it, it's about enriching it. So that to me coincides very well with Healthspan. I'm guessing, many of you may have heard the term Healthspan versus lifespan. And Healthspan is really about how do we stay vital and active? How do we have connection and purpose as we move into our older years? And frankly, I want to be the best version of myself that I can. So whether that is, being a passionate partner with my husband, or being engaged and present with my daughters, or importantly, being a leader who is inspiring change in this space. When I think about traditional medicine and, kind of making a comparison, our healthcare system is broken, but in particular, traditional medicine is really so focused on treating disease and not focused on preventing it or keeping you well, or avoiding it. And longevity is. So that in its simplest form is it's prevention. It's about being proactive. It's about really understanding how your body is functioning, how things you're putting into it, things you're doing with it, are having impacts, and how your even your genes that you've been gifted from your parents, how those are impacting you, and how you can make modifications to those as you make certain changes in your lifestyle habits. And so I think that when we think about longevity, it's so many things that come together, so kind of think Cenegenics, really does sit at the intersection of like data, technology, and metabolic science. And it does so because you need all of those things to truly understand how to guide change and make a difference in each person's life. And we want to approach each person individually because we're all different. And so what might work for one person isn't going to work for another. And so longevity really allows us that opportunity to optimize for what makes us our best versions of ourselves. And so that's really how I think about it and how I just live it myself personally.
That is helpful. So it sounds like it's also just a little bit like a retirement account, right? Where if you start later, you're just going to have to be more aggressive versus starting earlier on the longevity stuff in your 30s and 40s, given it's all preventive.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that is, I'm so glad you made that point, because you can start at any point. This is not like, oh, I should have started this in my 30s or 40s. You know, there's no point now if I'm in my 60s or 70s. That's absolutely true. It's just, you might need to be a little bit more aggressive. There might need to be a few more different interventions. We're going to approach things differently, but everyone should start. There's no, it's too late to start. You can absolutely impact how you're aging and what your health span looks like long-term.
Awesome. So let's talk about testing and assessments a little bit. So on average, you know, we each spend about 7 minutes with our PCPs during our annual physicals. And we cover 2 types of testing, right? One is your blood work or your biomarkers, and the other is kind of your physical and behavioral biometrics. So we're going to talk about the former first. Kristy, what are some of the major blood biomarkers that we should be paying attention to that our PCPs may overlook? Usually because we're still, you know, within the PCP's broad range, but not necessarily optimized. So for instance, for me, A1C, which is blood sugar, and DHEA, which is a hormone, were very big ones that were never flagged until I did Cenegenics, because I was still technically within my PCP's broad ranges.
Yeah, there are a variety of blood serum biomarkers that can be measured, and they are all beneficial, and they all drive awareness to how your body is functioning overall. So I agree. Your PCP is definitely looking at kind of like your standard, your cholesterol, your glucose, they're taking your blood pressure and so forth. But what they're not focusing in on are all the other, I mean, there's over 100 biomarkers that we can measure in your body to really understand what's going on. And so I would say, when I think about important ones that are often overlooked or not given the attention that they should, A1C is definitely one of them. I would also say a big one is hormones. So you mentioned DHEA, but also understanding your testosterone levels, your estradiol and progesterone levels for women, looking at your inflammation, so your C-reactive protein, cortisol, how is your body handling stress? And there's good stress and there's bad stress. So vitamin D is another great example. So all of these things, I don't want to list 100 of them, but those are some that have really, I think, not gotten the attention that they should in the traditional medicine setting, but they truly have, a lot of value and impact on how your body is performing and how it's going to perform, later on. I think that one of the things that, oftentimes people think is, they go to their PCP, they get their labs drawn, and it's a basic panel, and they get them back, and can't tell you how many times my friends or family have said, "Oh, my labs were normal." I'm like, were they? Were they though? There's a normal range, certainly. The labs have put together a normal range, but that is based on this huge data set population, just kind of lumping everybody together. And everyone on this call is very different. So how can we say that what is normal for Apar is normal for me? And how do you take in all of the other things that are taking place in your body with your other levels and all the external factors that are having impact on that? And so that is where you really want to think about, do I want to be kind of traditional medicine normal, which I would personally, I kind of say it's average. Do you want to be average, or do you want to be optimal? And optimal is very much about looking at all the biomarkers, looking at all of the biometrics, looking at your lifestyle, looking at your family history, looking at your current, state of affairs. Like it's bringing it all together in one very comprehensive picture to then start making decisions around, okay, how do I, maybe I'm having, this symptom or that symptom, but how do I think about addressing this? And, are there early indicators that maybe I'm not feeling, such as your A1C? You probably didn't realize that blood sugar was a concern. Yeah, you had no idea. But that has such an impact and influence on how your body is, metabolizing, and that cognitive function and keeping you sharp. And is your body, your heart health, your cardiovascular health, how is your body really standing up against not only your own like genes and time, but the external factors of just everyday life and what people go through. And so to kind of just bucket us all into a normal state, I think is doing us a disservice. And so that's why I think it's so important to be very personalized in your approach and really understand the importance of optimizing in all the key areas of your life, not just one, to really have maximum impact.
Thank you. So let's talk about biometrics then, the second type of testing, which is, it's basically physical and biological measurements. And because of celebrities and influencers, we have really increased our awareness of certain tests out there, like DEXA scans. I'm curious, just a show of hands, like how many folks here are familiar with DEXA? And what about Pernuvo? Another one that's also gotten a lot of media attention, VO2 max. So the question is, Kristy, do these tests really provide value? And if so, how should we engage with these tests? And what kind of data can we expect to get? There's just so much out there.
There's so much out there. It can almost be information overload at times. But the data that you can get out of these tests, those that you mentioned, a few others that I'll kind of mention here are really important. And but they're not important like siloed. It's not just that information. It's that information coupled with all of the other things that I've, been talking about. It's looking at your biomarkers, it's looking at your health history, it's looking at your lifestyle and pulling it all together. So, just to kind of like break down like some of like the core diagnostics and like what they do and why they're important, DEXA scan. That one is a fantastic test that is really focused on looking at overall body composition. And so you're going to not only get full body composition, but they're going to break it down into your lean muscle mass, your body fat percentage, and bone density, which is so important. And I'm happy to see there's growing awareness around the importance of bone density, but especially for women and women who are going through menopause. When you think about how we age, there's just a natural deterioration of your bone as we age. And so if your bone density is low, then you are going to be at risk for frailty, for potential falls and fracture risk. And then that adds complexity and an issue to how you're aging, well into your older years. And so body composition, through the DEXA, that full picture, and then really being able to break it down, I would say is
to ensure the
super
highest
helpful.
quality service, this call may be monitored.
The VO2 max is the other test. So the VO2 max is a test that can be done on a bicycle or a treadmill. This is a test that I'm going to be very honest, like it's intense. You're going to be pedaling as hard as you can if you're on that bike, and they're going to push you to kind of maximum thresholds. But the importance and the data that they're able to gain from this is really centered around your cardiovascular health. And it can be an indicator for early onset heart disease. What it can also do, however, is be used to create a personalized exercise prescription for you. So your trainer, your personal performance health coach can take that information and give you a plan and create thresholds in which you need to reach with regards to your heart rate and how you're exercising and how frequently, that are actually going to have benefit and actually allow you to progress versus just spending 30 minutes on the treadmill or the elliptical and thinking you got a good workout, but did you exercise your heart? What is your oxygen consumption? So that test is like just across the board, incredibly valuable. Full body MRI, as you mentioned, the Pernuvo, certainly if, you're interested in understanding what possibly could be going on in your body as it relates to potential cancers or various other diseases that they're able to detect that you don't have yet symptoms for, or maybe there's a family history. And so you want to understand, is there anything underlying or kind of sneaking up, or is there something just there that you did not know was there? I think that those are, incredibly helpful. I would say with all of these tests, however, it's not just you go, you do it, you get the results. And it's important to partner again with an expert that can really tie together for you what all the data means and what it means to you personally, and how, again, you can fold that into everything else that is going to impact your health. So there's various other diagnostics tests that I could get into, but essence of time, I want to just mention a couple of other tests too that aren't quite diagnostic, but they are important. So think about food allergy testing or nutrient testing. I think that those give people information. It arms them with information that they wouldn't otherwise have around, am I deficient in certain nutrients? Maybe I'm not getting the nutrients I need in the food that I'm eating. Are there certain supplements I should be taking to help offset that? Are there food allergies that I might have to certain foods? I, for one, did my food allergy test. I was not allergic, I didn't have a severe allergy to anything per se, but I had sensitivity, and that sensitivity was causing inflammation within my body. And then my body was reacting and responding to it. So I love eggs, and they're healthy and they're easy to make and quick to do. I ate a lot of eggs, but I would always feel bloated. I would feel tired after I ate my breakfast or if I ate them for lunch. And I never thought it was my eggs. Well, come to find out, I have a high sensitivity to eggs. I eliminated that for a period of time, and it was so interesting to see how my body, the inflammation went down, and I felt so much better. I eliminated those issues, and they were directly correlated. So arming yourself just with information around, again, how your body is just taking in and navigating all the things that you're doing to it and putting in it is important. Wearables. I've got my Oura ring on here. I'm sure a lot of people have different types of wearables, and I think that they serve a great purpose. Again, it's about information. But how much information, as I said at the start of this, is too much information, and what do you do with it? And I think that that is why it's so important that you not rely on any single test or wearable or that data to kind of make decisions and change lifestyle or create new habits. You really need to, one, look at things comprehensively, but two, you need to look at things in a way that is measuring trends over time, because our bodies are always changing. They're going to continue to change. And so understanding that, my sleep score might be, in the tank, this last week, but I wake up feeling great. My psyche was like all messed up. I was like, gosh, well, I should have a bad day because my sleep score was terrible. And my health coach was like, okay, Kristy, stop just looking at it each and every day. Let's watch it over time. Let's look at the trends. Let's also talk about everything else that's going on. What are your lab results look like? And so that's how we were able to really kind of manage my expectation. So using the data, but making it useful and valuable, and not just getting overly concerned or overly singular on one particular thing.
Sure. It's really helpful. And I guess it just blows my mind that a lot of these tests are still not covered, in our regular annual physical appointments. Just to follow on, if you had to prioritize, you mentioned a lot of tests. If you had to prioritize, curious, how would you advise doing that?
Oh, it's a great question. Honestly, I think really understanding your DEXA and your VO2 are probably the top two diagnostics and the data that comes from those that can have the most impact on your health, and that can really give you information to help you start to make changes to optimize. They're all encompassing. Obviously the full body MRI is very specific to cancers and some select diseases. But when you do a DEXA and you do that VO2, you're looking at your full body, your muscle, your fat, your bone density, and your cardiovascular endurance. And those things, you need all of those things, to keep going each and every day. And so if you can understand where you're at And it's not just about doing it one time. It's about doing it on, a regular cadence. So figuring out, how often do you need to repeat it? Because with change, and if you've made lifestyle modifications, you should start to see improvements, hopefully. Or if you're not, then you need to make adjustments in another direction. But continuously monitoring those two things, I think, bring the greatest value.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because those are definitely the two tests for me that it just came as a surprise. When I looked under the hood, I saw that my VO2 max for someone that works out 5 times a week was pretty pathetic. And it just told me that I'm doing all the wrong things. I'm not really elevating my heart rate to what I should be, because I'm standing, on my elliptical watching my TV show. So that's helpful. So I guess building on that a little bit, in addition to just testing, right, there are tons of anti-aging products and services out there that we also hear about on social media. Many of these are single point solutions, like supplements for your microbiome, or cold plunging, or even GLP-1s like Ozempic. Which of these would you say, Kristy, have been proven most effective, and which are likely misconceptions?
So there are certainly a lot of single point solutions out there. I do think, obviously some have, positive impacts for some people under certain scenarios. I think that the fact that people are taking an interest in these and they're engaging with them, for me is like an initial win, because even if it's not long term, it's at least showing that they are wanting to take an active role in their health, and they're looking to understand and better themselves. So I think from that viewpoint, it's positive. Now you can go down a whole bunch of rabbit holes as a result of that, but the challenges that come with those. And I think that especially with social media today, people again need to understand what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. And there might be contraindications. You mentioned cold plunge. It's a great one. Cold plunges and saunas. I know that those are like a big thing right now, and they're great. And I think that a lot of people are finding a lot of benefit from them. But what's interesting is that women who are going through menopause, if they have like a contraindication with, or it can cause a contraindication if they have an underlying issue with cardiovascular disease or arthritis. And so how would you know that if you are not talking to your team of experts that really understand how your body is, functioning and what your health level is? You're just going to go in and do it. Now, again, I'm not saying that's for everybody, but you really need that team of experts to help you navigate all of these different solutions that are out there, so that you can really understand, is it really having an impact for me? Is there, a potential issue or contraindication that might result if I do it? Or is it just, I like to do it, and if it doesn't help me, it's okay. I like to go do it. Right. And so, but it's a choice. It's an active and informed, importantly, choice that you're making. And you can't do that if you don't have all the information and all the pieces in the puzzle to make that decision. GLP-1s. I think that GLP-1s, obviously started out as like that single point solution, but they are growing and expanding out from that. They are, I think, it's interesting, obviously growing awareness for sure, but I think what is that expansion that's happening is really tied to change in behavior. And so really having a positive impact on people's change in behavior. So there was a recent Cornell study that was done on people that were on GLP-1s. And what it showed was that those individuals over a period of time, when they would go grocery shopping, their grocery bills were less, they're spending less money at the grocery store each month. But the biggest thing that I found so interesting is when you looked at the ratio of their food that they were purchasing, from junk food versus healthy food, it changed dramatically. And so their junk food went down by almost 40%. And so that is, I think, a huge win as it relates to making lifestyle modifications, changing habits, and really being able to adopt a new way of thinking and a new way of living that can have a direct impact on your health. When we kind of take that and pair it with what we've done at Cenegenics and the outcomes we've seen with our patients that are on GLP-1s, coupled with that physician hormone medical management and working with the performance health coach on nutrition and personalized exercise plans, what we've seen are our patients are increasing their muscle mass, and that is allowing them to really ensure that they're setting themselves up for success as they age. And that also has an impact directly on their gut health too, is something that we've seen. So thinking about, the gut and how important, ensuring that that is optimized, and not only what you're putting into your body, but how you're managing stress and what nutrients you're taking in, that has a huge impact. So when we look at kind of these single point solutions, I think that you have to just be very cautious and aware of how they're going to impact you. And I think you need to do it in conjunction, again, with a team of experts that really understand what is happening within your body, and not just going in and saying, oh, well, I'm just going to take a GLP-1, or I'm going to just go do a cold plunge and I'm going to live forever, because that's not the answer.
Right. So let's switch gears a little bit. I think we've talked a lot about tests and assessments, and you've shared a bunch of information. Let's switch gears to some practical steps that we can actually take for daily improvement. So can you share, Kristy, a few actionable tips and daily habits that have been showed to make the most significant impact on your long-term physical or cognitive health? Again, I think this is for those folks, many of the folks in this room may be interested, but not necessarily ready to dive in head first. So I think this would be helpful.
Yeah. So, there's a number of different strategies, that people can evaluate and start to adopt. I think importantly, again, little wins, like taking those first steps, taking action to kind of be more cognizant and aware of what you're doing, and little changes you can start to make in your life, because it is about maintaining a lifestyle. This is not a one and done. There's no magic pill. There's no, there is no single source miracle, as much as we would all love that. But it takes a culmination of different things that you're going to do in your everyday life, that you're going to do consistently for the rest of your life. And so the obvious, right? Drink water. I've got my big can of water right here. Drink a lot of water. But you know what? That might not be so easy for somebody who is just, never had water or very little, and they drink 3 to 4 or 5 sodas a day. And you say to them, well, you need to just drink more water. It might be challenging for them. Somebody else might go, okay, done. They quick cold turkey and they go right to water. But I think for somebody with, kind of trying to navigate this and do it in a way that they can have success, we would say, look, we understand you're drinking 3 to 4 cans of soda a day. Why don't we move to diet soda? Again, I don't think diet soda is the answer. Water is, but let's take baby steps to get us there. And so I don't know if you know this or not, but a single can of soda has 200 grams of sugar. So, or excuse me, if they switch from regular to diet, you can absolutely eliminate and significantly reduce the amount of sugar that you're consuming in your body in a pretty impactful way. And so that is something that is a win. That's a small win. And so once you hit that milestone, so you've now for the last month been drinking diet soda versus regular soda, you've removed 6,000 grams of sugar from your diet in that month. Now let's start incorporating water more frequently. Let's, do some other things. So that's like an easy one. My favorite, and I think it's like the most like undervalued. It's not sexy. It's not, sleek, but it's so easy and it's so important. It's balance. I think people should really understand the importance of being able to have balance of their body in their as they age. And this holds true as we've kind of talked about already, like looking at your bone density, exercising, building that up, building the muscles up. Being able to balance is something that as you age, if you're not doing all of these things to intervene and to keep your body optimized, you will start to lose the ability to balance. And so simple test is just stand up, stand on one leg, close your eyes, time yourself, and do it in increments. And I'm going to say do it in increments of start with 15 seconds. You'd be surprised how long 15 seconds is when your eyes are closed, balancing on one foot. And do the next one. And it's something you can do at home, in your office, on the beach, wherever you might be. But if you get into the regular routine every day of just building up your balance, that can really help you as you age, especially if in the event, you're going up and down some stairs, right? You're going to be more apt to be stable and be able to like maybe stop yourself if you trip than having you fall and potentially fracture a hip. And then again, we all know what happens. You go into the hospital with a fractured hip, and oftentimes people don't come out, or if they do, they are a very different person than when they went in. And there's a lot of challenges. And so I think balance is something that people can do immediately without issue. And you just work yourself up. And when it becomes super easy and you've got it, maybe you add in some hand weights, right? Kind of challenge yourself, create a test out of it with your kids, your significant other, whoever, who can balance the longest. I think that it's important that people really understand that the little things like that, or even like the sugar in the soda can, those things add up over time. And they really can, if they're not addressed, and oftentimes need to be eliminated, they can have real detrimental impact on your longevity and ultimately your health span. Cognition, I think that, one of our physicians, has a great example of this. He's like, if you play the piano, you will open up new parts of your brain. And that allows for growth and cognition and mental sharpness and speed, so that you're not seeing that decline. It really and I'm not saying everybody should go out and take piano lessons if you haven't, but think of things like that, right? So think of things, it's all about staying active, really, right? It's about staying active, getting in your steps, playing the piano, taking on a new hobby, keeping yourself involved in the community, and being active. Those things really do have an impact on your long-term health.
That's great info. I know when I did my balance test at Cenegenics, I freaked out. I couldn't stand on one leg with my eyes closed for more than 5 seconds. And over the last 12 months, I've worked on it, and I try to do it every day or every other day. And my husband and I have contests, and I agree. I agree with what you're saying, kind of just incorporating these small daily habits into your routines. It's a start, right?
It's a start. And if you at least make the start, you take that first step, literally and figuratively, that you just every day do something a little more, and it really can help.
Sure. So we are almost at time. I just have one last question. And that's, in a room full of women, we can't ignore the big milestone that we all have hit or will hit, and that's menopause. Can you talk a little bit about what this entails and potential treatments or therapies that people may seek out as they go through menopause?
Yes, I love this topic for a few reasons. One, I absolutely love that we are now in a time and place where people are bringing more and more awareness to this. It is a natural thing that happens to every single woman out there. And it has not received the attention that it has needed. It has, I think, oftentimes hindered women in their ability to progress in age. And they oftentimes like lose themselves and feel that, they're just not who they used to be. And it does not have to be that way. There are absolutely ways in which you can navigate whether it's perimenopause and then into menopause, in a way that you can maintain who you are, and you can do so in a really optimal way. Obviously, I do sound like a broken record, but it does tie back to like looking at that comprehensive picture, understanding your biomarkers, understanding your biometrics, doing a full systems review, working with a team of experts who really understand and who care about your health, and making sure that what you're doing is personalized to you so that you can continue to optimize as you age. I know we're close to time, but I just want to share a quick personal story. So last June, July, I thought I was losing my mind. I thought I had a midlife crisis, an early midlife crisis. I was 46, and I just one day woke up and was not myself. I started to gain weight like overnight. I felt like I put on like 8-10 pounds overnight. I was like having brain fog and really having difficulty like concentrating on things. I just had no interest in anything in my life, and really kind of wanted to just like be a recluse and not go out and do all the things that I would normally be doing. I was emotional. I would cry just for no reason, or I would be really angry for no reason, and I couldn't explain it. And so I had my lab work done with my Cenegenics physician, and previously in April, I had had it done, and everything on there, you know, for all intents and purposes was optimal, and I was chugging along and doing well. And then this started happening. So we repeated my labs. And what we discovered is that my FSH and my estradiol, the two main biomarkers that that you're going to look at for a woman that's entering perimenopause and into menopause, they just went off the charts. So my FSH just skyrocketed high, and my estradiol just tanked. And so just to give you some perspective, like your FSH is something that, and again, this is everybody's different. Women can, you know, kind of experience this transition over, you know, call it 6 months to 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. Everybody's different. And you're going to start to see changes in those levels over time. And that's why you want to do your blood work, so you know what's happening and you can adjust accordingly. Mine in April, as I said, was optimal. In July, when I had my labs done, it was 82, and optimal is under 30. So my body, within a matter of months, just converted, and my estradiol tanked. So those two things coupled together, my physician explained to me that I now met the clinical definition and criteria of going into menopause. And I was like, I'm 46. Like, what are you talking about? And I didn't think it would happen this fast. And he said, well, again, Kristy, everybody's different. I have to say, I was even like questioning like my marriage. Like, I was like, do I even want to be in this marriage? We've been married for 31 years. We are very happy. We have 2 beautiful kids, but I'm like, I don't know what I want in my life. So it was so like jolting to me. And so when he shared this news with me, he said, look, I think given everything I know about you, given where we're at today, I think that we should start you on a low dose of estradiol, and then let's monitor you and see what happens. I started estradiol, and within 2 weeks, I kid you not, within 2 weeks, I was my old self again. And I felt better than ever. My bloating, my weight gain started to diminish. My energy levels came back. I wasn't like as emotional as I was. I didn't want to like, you know, change my whole life. I felt human again. And it was the estradiol. Like, it had such an impact. And so I share that with you all here today because, again, everybody's going to be different, and, you know, your bodies are going to respond differently. But for me, that is what worked. And now fast forward, here we are in January. I have to tell you, I'm 47 now. I just had a birthday. I feel the healthiest and the best that I've ever felt. And I'm in menopause. And I just want to like sing it to the world, because women need to understand that they don't have to settle for what traditionally maybe their moms or sisters or friends have had to endure. There are options, there's action that can be taken, And if you just will partner with experts in this space that really understand hormones and really understand how to optimize and really understand how to look at your whole body, it is going to be life-changing for you. And you will gain so much out of it. And I'm getting emotional because it had such an impact. So that's my story. Sorry, but it's so important. And I just want women to know there are options.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Kristy. And I'm not there yet, but I know it's coming. And it's great to hear that there are options out there so that we don't have to go through it, the way our mothers did.
Right.
It's a great story. Are we ready to start answering some questions?
Let's do it. So if you can please type in the text box any questions that you guys might have, Deborah will call on you.
Yes, so we've got one first from Linda, and she wanted you to address the likelihood of false positives in testing, especially when you're doing tests for early indications of things like cancer and other scary diagnoses. And the second part of that is the next steps for best practices once they do detect something like an early cancer.
So Linda, thank you for that question. So we have on the line with us today, because I'm not a physician and I did not finish nursing school, so I'm not a nurse. So I don't want to overstep my bounds here, but I would love to pull in a member of my team who is part of our clinical leadership team, Rudy Anaba. He's our VP of Performance Health, works very closely with our Chief Medical Advisor. And I think that having Rudy maybe chime in on this question, Linda, would be super helpful.
Yeah, so that's obviously a significant concern. And again, let me briefly say thank you for having me on, Kristy. But so we partner with Prenuvo as it relates to MRI options due to their technology having the lowest incidence of false positive readings. In common MRIs, that is observed more often. So partnering with a forward-thinking company and a provider, that is the best case where they cut down on those risk factors. And in addition to that, they have their AI in partnership with their radiologists, having the training and that advanced learning around the density of those white spots to identify if it is potentially a false positive or if it is something more serious. They've adopted more of a younger clientele that we've observed for the Prenuvo MRI. So if you don't find anything, recommendation is anywhere from repeating a testing possibly every 2 to 3 years. But if you do find something, then handing off that data to your primary care and then getting together with an oncologist to decide what the next steps are, whether it be blood work or biopsy. But that would be a shared decision-making process between you and your primary care physician.
What was the name of the company?
Prenuvo.
Can you spell that, please?
Prenuvo.
Great, thank you. We also had a question about, are you considering the use of REMS technology as an option to DEXA?
So we do DEXA within all of our facilities. And the reason why DEXA is primarily used, because that's going to be really the gold standard for diagnosing osteopenia and osteoporosis based on the T-score that's evaluated. So when we do DEXA scan analysis on our patients, we do a lumbar spine scan, which is looking at lumbar spine 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we also look at the neck of the femur on both the left and the right side. And then we do a fourth scan, which is the whole body. And the whole body DEXA scan is where you get the body composition measurements, you get the lean muscle mass, we get to make recommendations around nutrition and exercise and sarcopenia risk factors. But from the osteoporosis and osteopenia and fracture risk, that's where we primarily look at the lumbar spine and the hips. And if someone is at what's called a -1 T-score, if you think on a scale, a 0 is going to be kind of neutral. Healthy bones preferably are above that 0 baseline into positive integers. If you're below that at a -1.0, that's when you are at initial bone loss, being osteopenia. But when you're at a -2.5 is when you're actually diagnosed with osteoporosis. And that's where potential interventions with some drugs that are available, doctors may prescribe to their patients to help start to build bone density because it is severe at that point. that's when REMS technology and the ultrasounds will come in. If someone is getting treated with an osteoporotic medication and they need to see how quickly they are now building new bone tissue and having that bone turnover, that's where that is highly beneficial because it does not have radiation. To side note, the DEXA scan radiation, we actually, at all of our facilities, we have the state radiation control programs come out to evaluate every year. The amount of radiation you get from a single DEXA scan is around the equivalent of flying from JFK to LAX. So it's not significant. However, if someone does have significant bone loss and they do need to track these items, maybe weekly or monthly, whatever it may be, over the period of a year, that can start to accumulate. So that's where the REMS technology may be a better move once someone starts specific treatment around osteoporosis. But initially doing the DEXA scan, whether it be quarterly or yearly, you're likely getting more risk of radiation from your typical travel routine.
Okay, thank you. We also have a question from Yashi. Can you speak to the value of red light and near infrared light therapy, as well as what you use it for?
So it's very beneficial. Obviously, there are different levels of quality that are available. All have significant impact in one way, shape, or form. There are some that we've actually observed see dramatic changes in CRP, as Kristy mentioned. So high sensitivity CRP is our C-reactive protein. It's a marker for systemic inflammation in our body. And that's what's been coined essentially the silent killer. And that's going to lead to heart disease, lead to cognitive dysfunction, dementia, Alzheimer's, and so on. So when we manage inflammation by way of nutrition, exercise, improving sleep, those are obviously our lifestyle elements that can be beneficial. But if someone does have significant inflammation, whether it be chronic or acute, red light therapy can actually be very beneficial for them. We are actually working with a partner for some of our customers and our members to utilize, because they're doing a lot of deep dives into the technology around red light therapy on injury prevention and recovery from exercise. They actually have certain patents that they may be releasing out now in 2025 on inflammatory bowel disease patients and the impact of the red light for the inflammation that they have in their gut and in their colon. So it is very significant. So if someone does identify risk factors, say, for example, with their brain EEG, if we see reductions in reaction time or reductions in the stimulus and the alpha waves that are presented, and we pair that with a low VO2 max, so now you're not exercising, you don't have a lot of BDNF, for the brain function, and maybe someone's carrying around a lot of visceral fat, which is inflammatory. All of these things lead to like a lot of different beasts to try and tame. And while you can do that with lifestyle interventions, that's where some of those ancillary services may be really beneficial, because you can like turn the ship around in a faster way when you're utilizing these tools appropriately.
I think we've got time for maybe
Great.
one more question.
Thank you. Yes. Let's see. We've got the scans. We talked about REMS and what age do you suggest starting to do tests like DEXA? 20s, 30s, 40s, and how often should you retest?
To Kristy's, kind of talk, it also really depends on each individual. But I don't really feel there's too young of an age for adults to begin to have DEXA scans completed. As we get older, even like as we go from 20 to 25, 25 to 30, we do see small losses in muscle mass, because typically we start to are burdened with inactivity. I know it sounds like a hyperbole, a burden with inactivity, but as we dive into our professional lives, as we have families, as we do all these many things, we tend to not be as physical. We don't put our body under as much stress as we get older. So there are those minor losses in lean tissue. And by getting the data early on, you understand a baseline from where you are currently, and then what actions you need to plug into to start to optimize that. When we look at the DEXA scan, for example, speaking to the body composition, we get how many pounds of fat-free mass your body has. Fat-free mass would be all the tissue except for fat mass. So it's going to be your lean muscle and your bone. That's metabolically active tissue. So we understand that there's a metabolic demand for, say, protein, for example. So by seeing how much muscle mass you have, we'll take Apar, for example, we know how much protein she should be consuming based on her lifestyle, based on her training regimen, and based on her size, that if she wants to improve that, she can see now small gains in muscle mass over time, Or if her job is to simply retain that, we know what her bottom range for her protein requirement is. So that's a really great thing to do if you're in a healthy space and you're managing your health metabolically and you don't have known disease risk factors and you're doing everything with your supplementation and your diet really well. Even once per year is great. You don't need to do it all the time. But when someone is maybe engaging in like a weight loss program for the first time, or maybe they engage with a physician with a GLP-1 therapy, I would recommend possibly more frequent DEXA scans, maybe every 4 months, if you don't want to do it every quarter. But then you're going to be able to keep tabs on not only how much protein you'd be consuming for muscle, but also if your dosing for the GLP-1 is possibly too high, where you are under eating and now losing muscle mass, and maybe that's now impacting your bone density. Kristy shared that our patients on GLP-1s, we don't see muscle loss, we don't see bone loss on our programs because checking this data frequently is a big part of our program. So our doctors can understand when to maybe pull back on certain things or when the patient's able to push a little bit more. But like it's how you use the data that's important. So if someone's healthy, they're not using any interventions, once per year may be a great place to start. And as your interests start to drive up, then you could do it a little bit more. But if you are engaging in a certain therapy where muscle loss is a potential risk factor, a higher frequency is probably in your best interest so that you don't have to dig yourself into a hole and then try to get yourself out of it later.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I started at 40. I didn't think I needed it because I always believed I was pretty healthy. For me, the results were just eye-opening. I mean, I realized I'm going to be osteopenic by 55 if I don't start to amplify my strength workouts. Yeah, I agree with Rudy. I think once a year, at least as a start, is a good thing. So I do have one last question for the audience, and that's just, what additional longevity topics do you all want to talk about? I think we shared a lot of information today. But for future events, we would love to take into consideration any follow-on discussions you guys would be interested in, whether it's menopause, hormone therapy, bone health, etc. If you can just throw that into the chat, that would be helpful. And also as a thank you for attending, Cenegenics is offering a generous 20% discount today off of their performance health evaluation, which covers a lot of the tests that we talked about. It is pricey, but it was eye-opening for me. And lastly, I would like to give a huge thanks to Kristy for sharing her advice, to HBS for helping organize this event, and to you all for being here today and taking charge of your health. Feel free to reach out if you're interested in learning more about longevity or Cenegenics. My contact information is up on that slide. And thank you, everyone, for joining today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristy, and thank you all for attending. And yes, please post what you would like to see in the future because we will capture all of these after the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.